A year ago, if you can believe it, Nvidia RTX 50 super leaks were spreading like wildfire. And basically, it became clear, at least to me and in my reporting, that Nvidia was considering both increasing the VRAM of a lot of their graphics cards from the Blackwell series by 50%, while also getting more aggressive with price performance due to their products, well, at least losing some market share to RDNA 4 in do it yourself sales. For months, you could see RDNA 4 dominate the Newegg and Amazon GPU bestsellers, and you can still see that to this day. And they were preparing this big super comeback, and then, well, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Sam Altman manipulated the market to hurt OpenAI's competition. Nvidia resultingly cut orders for Blackwell graphics cards for gamers, and then basically just stopped production of Blackwell gaming cards almost altogether in order to service their AI contracts that were really overstretched and overbooked. That's why, for the past 6 months, when you look for Blackwell graphics cards online, you find them at insane prices. And it's not really actually just about RAM costs going up. That's not what's going on here because, well, these price increases, a 5070 Ti for over $1,000, these increases are not at all proportional to how much more expensive RAM has gotten over the past 12 months. It's simply that Nvidia is not making enough graphics cards, supply and demand, not enough supply for demand, prices go up. And, I say this because I've seen, I know other leakers are out there saying the 50 Super Series is coming soon. Don't worry, I'm about to show you everything I know about it in a leak slide in a minute. But before I get to that leak slide, I need to say that when I see other people talking about the potential launch for a 50 Super Series right now, almost all of the comments are talking about how expensive the RAM will be for the Super Series. And I gotta say, you guys are missing the forest for the trees. The 50 series pricing has been entirely divorced from the manufacturing costs to make these graphics cards for about a year now. Even if Nvidia was to pay like $20 per gigabyte, which I do not think they will, I think they'll end up paying $10 to $15 per gigabyte at most for the GDDR7 that will go into the Super Series. That's still just like, I don't know, 80 to 160 extra dollars on graphics cards that already cost over $1,000, right? Think about this. If people are willing to pay, or not many are, but some are apparently willing to pay $1,400 for a 50, 80, 16 gigabyte, then paying that extra like $150 is pretty much just 10% more in cost for 50% more RAM, like 10% more performance. It's a no-brainer move. Again, I don't think you should pay that much for a 5080. I think you should pay half as much for a 9070 XT. That's nearly the same performance in all honesty. But if you were considering only buying Nvidia, their prices are so high right now that in reality, actually, adding more RAM to add 10% more to the cost actually disproportionately makes these cards better price performance in this wacky situation that we're in right now. So if you're worried about the Super Series pricing because you're worried about RAM costs, guys, the street prices of these cards are so insane lately that it has nothing to do with the RAM. Don't worry about the cost of RAM for the Super Series. Worry about if Nvidia will bother to make enough of these for supply to meet demand. And if supply does not meet demand for the initial super launch, I think from Nvidia's perspective, even if these cards are sold for vastly above MSRP still, it looks less silly for a $1,600 card to have 24 gigabytes than it does for a $1,400 card to have 16 gigabytes. And at least they'll be pulling in more revenue per card sold, even if they're not selling a whole bunch of them. I think that's probably, at least in the short term, the main mentality behind these cards launching finally. In addition to the fact that, frankly, the AI market has been moving more towards LPDDR5X than it has GDDR7 lately, to the point that supposedly LPDDR5X prices are getting somewhat close to GDDR7. I have to point that out as well because I'm sure there's people in the comments that would just go, actually, GDDR7 is super expensive right now, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it is, but not as much as you would think compared to like what's making laptops really expensive right now, right? Like if you go from 32 gigabytes of RAM of LPDDR5X to 64 in a laptop, yeah, you might be adding like $200 worth of cost depending on the vendor and what contracts they've negotiated. But if you're going from just like 16 to 24 gigabytes, no, the GDDR7 doesn't cost that much more per gigabyte in the current market with how wacky it is, and you're not adding 32 gigs, you're adding 8. But anyways, I'll also talk about other reasons why I think Nvidia might launch the Super Series in a second. First, let's get the actual leak out of the way after an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by David Protein Bars. So for the past few months, or really at this point for the majority of 2026, me and especially my girlfriend have been loving the packages of David Protein Bars that were sent to us. But we don't just like David Protein Bars, we genuinely love them, and it's not like we just ate one and went yum. They've made a place in our weekly rotation. We keep using them to this day, and that's because they genuinely deliver on taste, texture, and macros, and for me, I still feel great after eating them. They don't like rot in your stomach like you just ate a bunch of candy, which can be a huge problem with snack bars. It's exactly what you need if you need a snack and don't have time to cook or just need something really, really quick. And I actually just did that recently. That Steam Deck price reaction video, it was a sudden one. I hadn't planned to do it that week. The price increase just came out of nowhere, and I had a really powerful reaction, and I had to keep my energy up because I really did care about it so much, but I hadn't planned to do a video that day. I was planning to eat sooner. I used one of the David Protein Bars that's sitting here in my office. Here's another one that's always here in case there's an emergency, and yeah, the video did great, and David was part of making it perform well. There are two main options for bars. The gold bars are the most performance focused with 28 grams of protein, 150 calories, zero sugar, and the texture I actually like the most. It's like cookie dough, but it's not cookie dough. And then there's the bronze bars that are more indulgent, 20 grams of protein, 150 calories, still zero sugar, so they're blood sugar friendly and don't crash or make you crash. My girlfriend loves these ones the most. And either way, all David bars are built on real evidence-based nutrition. They're designed to support muscle gain, fat loss, and performance without relying on gimmicks or a sugar spike to make you really excited when you try it and then crash later and wonder what just happened. So if you want to try one of them out, David is offering viewers a special deal. When you get 4 cartons, you can get the 5th one for free when you use my link below or the QR code on screen. And if you don't want to wait, you can go and find David Protein Bars at Target, Walmart, Kroger, Publix, and other locations. But I would really prefer the most if you'd support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out David through the links below today. Let me put this on screen here. And yeah, if you saw my leak about the Super Series from last year, you'd probably notice that this looks really similar, and that's because it is. And I want to be clear, I did not just copy and paste my leak from last year into this here. I saw similar specs sent to me from a couple of sources, and I said, are you sure? Like, you didn't just tell me it's the same, right? Can you double check your notes, double check what was said in a briefing? Did they literally just like a year later show the same specs on screen in a presentation? And the answer is pretty much yes. The 5080 Super, the 5070 Ti Super, they'll have the same CUDA core counts as the non-Super variants, but they will go to 24 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the 5080 Super will get 32 gigabit per second, so that's like 7% more bandwidth, but it's not as much as I was hoping, right? Some sources told me a year ago that maybe they could get to 36 gigabit per second, which would actually have been a substantial, like 20% increase in bandwidth, which I think could have netted over 15% performance gains. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, according to what I'm told. And so I've tamped down my estimate for the performance uplift a little bit. If you want 36 gigabit per second memory, you're going to have to wait to get RDNA 5. By the way, check out that video on screen if you want to see RDNA 5 specs. And besides all of this, yeah, look, the 5070 Super gets a few more CUDA cores than the 5070. But again, the big deal is that it's going to 18 gigabytes, and that's it. It's really about the RAM increase, but then one more core thing here for why I think all of these cards will probably get about a 10% performance boost. And that's that they're massively increasing the TDPs by 10 to like 17%, depending on which SKU we're talking about here. And I think that should put to rest worries that this performance increase will be negligible, like the 4080 to the 4080 Super. The 4080 Super didn't get a TDP increase, right? And so that's why, despite getting faster RAM, it was basically the same card. It was constrained by power. That's not going to happen this time around. They are increasing power by over 10% for some of these. I do believe that will yield you a notable performance increase along with the extra RAM. And then, well, another thing here, the 5060. From what I am told, the people at Nvidia aren't sure if this will be a super card. And in fact, they were cagey about what they wanted to call it. And personally, I think that's because they know there's a chance that like the 3080 or 3060 8 gigabyte, like the 3080 10 and 12 gigabytes that didn't get different SKU names. They just had different amounts of RAM, and therefore AIBs could try to trick you into getting the lower VRAM model for more money. I think there's a chance that NVIDIA is considering doing that again, and that's why, according to one of my sources, an NVIDIA rep was cagey about what the 5060 will be called. They know that if they just call it the 5060 12 gigabyte, despite That memory increase, as hardware unboxes demonstrated, likely giving it double-digit increases in performance that they know they're going to get a lot of criticism, and so they don't want to confirm that just yet. Another thing to say here, the Super Series is not expected to launch until Q4 or Q1. I've been directly told that more briefings will happen, probably with final specs in Q3. So I think that tells you this is probably going to be a fall or winter release and not before that. And, well, this is important as well. I was also told that nobody has any information regarding the RTX 60 series. I'm sure there's plenty of people thinking, really, why is the Super Series still coming out and possibly as late as early 27, late 26? Like, why? If that wouldn't that be like less than a year before the follow-up comes out? And the answer is, I can't say this 100%, but it's looking increasingly likely that the answer is no. It's because, just like before, the Super Series tends to launch around the middle of a generation, and despite us being almost 2 years into this generation, this might be a 3 to 4 year generation. And in fact, this really dovetails nicely into a video I put out where I completely outlined why I think there's a chance that we are hearing about rumors of the Super Series of 5090 Ti's, coming despite how long this generation's already gone on. It's because I think there's a genuine chance that Nvidia wants all 3 nanometer allocation basically for their AI customers for the next few years, and they don't want to make a new consumer gaming generation until they can use Intel capacity completely. And would you know what? By around 28 or 29, Nvidia will have designed a gaming GPU chiplet for Intel that will use Intel fabs, and therefore that would be actually just a good time to make the entire gaming lineup at Intel if you're already going to have that architecture ready to go on Intel fabs anyways. And until then, Nvidia will need some 4 nanometer products that are better than what they have now in the meantime. That's the Super Series. That's maybe even eventually some 750 watt 5090 Ti, by the way. Although right now I'm not told that's coming anytime soon, if it ever even does come out. Check out that video, by the way, if you want to know more about that potential product. And one more reason, actually, that the Super Series is probably coming out now when it's about to come out. And I know this is going to sound like it's at odds with the other reason I gave, but I don't think it really is. So, yes, short term, the Super Series will probably have inflated costs. It'll be hard to get. It's just adding more RAM to something they're overcharging for because they don't have enough supply for demand by choice. Sure. But, mid to long term, if the AI bubble were to pop or even just start to deflate, they've bought so much capacity with TSMC, they have to use it for something, and for something that people will want to buy. I think that could be the Super Series. I think that if AI demand even goes down by 10, 20%, they'll want those 4 nanometer wafers to still be used for something. And if they have a very attractive super lineup that actually eventually got somewhat close to its MSRP of these cards, then I think, yeah, they would have no problem selling those instead of AI chips. The profit margins wouldn't be as high, but they'd still be making a profit. I do believe some of this is Nvidia realizing the AI bubble could actually start popping pretty soon. And if you want to know why I think that, then watch the Ed Elson Broken Silicon, the level 1 text Broken Silicon from this year, or the one from this week, Ed Zitron. I'm confident something is going to come to a head fairly soon with the AI bubble, and you can watch those videos if you want to know why. But anyways, it is finally time to talk about another exciting product, one that will come out next year with ridiculous performance, and that is AMD Zen 6, a product that AMD has finally put out official benchmarks for, and I believe we can directly translate these benchmarks into a rough estimate for the performance increase you should expect for Zen 6 desktop. Now bear with me though, technically the benchmarks they put out were for Zen 6 Venice, for EPYC products, but it was done with an application that is often used as a proxy for performance increases for desktop products as well. And well, I'll show you. I'm going to break it down. I do believe we can take this information and basically prove the performance you should expect from Zen 6, moving beyond the rumors I've been putting out to fact. All right, so here we go. Now, at first, the benchmark AMD put out a 39% performance increase gen over gen. It doesn't really seem that impressive, right? They're going from 192 to 256 cores. That's barely more of a performance increase than the core count increase. Who really cares? But bear with me here. it's not going to be just 39% on desktop because they increased core counts on server 33%. On desktop, it's going to be a 50% increase, 16 to 24 cores, a 12.5% differential compared to the core count increase in server. Because of that, at a bare minimum, you should actually expect a 57% multi-threading increase from Zen 5 to Zen 6 on desktop. And I do believe that is a floor because, again, this benchmark they did with Venice, these were with really power-constrained products being pushed to their limits and then throttling in a way that desktop won't as much. I mean, look at this. These things have a 500-watt TDP, which sounds insane, but when you can consider you have like 192 to 256 cores, that's practically like 2 watts per core. And even for C cores, that's a thermal limit that means they're throttling more than desktop will per core. I mean, think about it. If they give 170 watts to the 24-core flagship for Zen 6, that's still 7 watts per core. Or if they give it 200 watts for the TDP limit, like with the 9950X3D2, that would be, like 8.33 watts per core. That's massively more wattage per core. They will be throttling less. 57% is the floor. And to those that say, yeah, but those are C cores, most evidence shows that C cores really only consume like 30% less energy, or are 30% more efficient, I should say, below 20 watts. It's not like they're consuming a fourth the energy usually. And so, no, they are throttling more. Furthermore, we don't know the final node of Zen 6 Desktop Classic, the thing you'll buy on AM5, but we do know that Venice is only N2P. So Zen 6 Desktop comes out later after Venice. It could be using some enhanced N2P, some hybrid N2 node, or even N2X, as I've leaked AMD was wanting to use. So it should be a slightly better node, at least for higher voltage as well. And honestly, though, even if it is just 57% more multi-threading performance, that's a bigger increase than we got with Zen 4, than Zen 3. This would still be the largest multi-threading increase since Zen 2, and it is going to be more because of something I've actually not told you yet. I've actually been burying the lead because I thought it would be good to start this section of the video outlining the methodology, how we could translate performance, without getting to this really important point here, and that's that AMD also showed in their notes for this benchmark that if you remove the power constraint, which I believe there will be less power constraints for the desktop variant, actually, Zen 6 Venice can be 70% faster than Zen 5 Turin. And if you add that 12.5% differential, well, what does that get you to? Almost double the multi-threading performance between Zen 5 and up to Zen 6, meaning that each one of those cores is vastly faster. You don't get to double the multi-threading with 50% more cores unless those cores are, well, running about 30% faster, like my leaks about clock speed and IPC have suggested. And again, I say could a lot here because we can't be quite sure if we're going to be closer to double the performance or the 57% floor. We can't be 100% sure, but I do believe that it's very likely it's closer to the higher number. And in fact, I think that it could exceed that number as well. And on that cheerful note, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please, as always, make sure that you like it. Make sure that you comment down below. Make sure that you share the video and make sure you are subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel and ring the bell button. Additionally, please support us on Patreon. If you have an extra $1, $2, $5 a month, if you do, you can get access to asking guest questions like Ed Zitron was just on. The next guest is actually going to be Mystic Ryan, where we'll be talking about console stuff. And actually, at even just the $2 tier, you'll get access to the Discord, where you can speak with thousands of fans and me about this video that just came out. But also, you'll be able to get access to a catalog of hundreds of die shrinks. A new one comes out at the end of this week that is talking about how the AI bubble will end. We had so many leftover reader mails from the Ed Zitron episode that I thought, let's just continue the conversation going and really crystallize me and Dan's final thoughts on what's going on with the AI bubble after talking to so many experts throughout this year so far. Again, get access to that with just the $2.56, the 256-bit tier. But for everybody else, if you made it this far into the video, as always, thank you for watching.